Hey guys, I'm Ashleen Seitz, writer, coach, goofball. Welcome back to my channel. Excited to have you here. We're going to talk more about writing habits. You know, should have seen that coming probably, because we're in this series about habits, covering the basics of writing and what it means to be a writer and how to get started and how to get through writer's block and all of those things. So today's topic is leave time to edit. Now, man, this is a challenge for most of us. We've all at some point been under a writing deadline, even if that was back in junior high English class or whatever. We've all had to deal with deadlines. But for writers, we tend to be procrastinators. I get a lot of writing ads on Instagram, and I also get a lot of things like apps for procrastination. And I'm pretty sure those two things are just like crossed together in the algorithms. We tend to procrastinate and we often work really well up to a deadline. But the problem with that is that you don't always have time to edit. And so I have to set a different deadline in my head and say, this is the deadline for writing, and then this is the deadline for editing. The editing deadline is the actual final deadline. And so today let's talk about that, how to get through that, how to make it, how to make your writing better. How to edit will come later, like what to edit for and that kind of stuff. We'll cover that in I'm going to do a whole editing series. So we'll get there. Don't panic. But for today, just some brief tips about editing and leaving time to edit. And the reason we do this, honestly, is because, especially when you're writing to a deadline, your draft can end up pretty sloppy. It can be messy, can have grammar problems, typos, all that kind of stuff. You don't know it as your brain is just hammering out the stuff, the content, the book, the article, whatever it is, the email, honestly. And things like Grammarly, those apps can help for sure, but they don't necessarily help your sentences make sense. So you want to make sure that you're editing. So here are my main points. Thoughts for today. Your best bet, point number one, your best bet is to leave time to take a break and then come back to it. I know, it's rough. At worst case scenario, this can look like a 30-minute break to do something else and to come back later. At best, I find it's about 1 to 2 days. And I know that's a lot for those of us who are procrastinators and are struggling to come back, and leave time for that. But it does help me to get completely out of that mindset of whatever I was writing, just kind of shake it off, move on, and then come back to it. And I feel like I have fresh eyes if I have 1 to 2 days. But like I said, worst case scenario, 20, 30 minutes, just go do something completely different and come back to it and read it again and see how it feels, see how it reads, see if it makes sense to you, see if you're still conveying what you wanted to convey. Just come back to it. So, second thing, if it's short, read it out loud when you edit. Read it out loud. I know it feels stupid and ridiculous, but your brain, your ears will catch things that your eyes will gloss over. So our brains have this amazing ability to just like fill in words or skip over typos. And that's why we don't even notice often typos in books. They're there. They exist, guys. I've found them. But it's because I've trained my brain to say, look for the typos, look for the typos, look for the typos. But even still, in my own writing, it can just make sense to me. And so if I read it out loud, sometimes I hear things and I'm like, oh, that didn't make sense. What was I trying to say? And then I can go back and edit. So that's the second thing. If it's short, read it out loud. Third thing, if you have time to do 2 passes at it, do it. If you can say, even if you're doing a 30-minute break, you're like, okay, I'm going to finish writing, take 30 minutes, come and do a concept edit. So working through it. Did I do what I wanted to do? Did I say what I wanted to say? Are all my main points there? Was I clear? Those kinds of things, and work through that, and then set that aside for another 20 or 30 minutes minimum, and then come back and say, okay, are all my sentences? Did I overuse any specific words? What do I need to look at for typos, for grammar? What are my tendencies? Just breeze through it and read it aloud if you can, if it's short, and go through it little detail by little detail. And then you don't even have to worry about the concepts. You know it makes sense. So you're just fixing the details. Now, fourth thing, if it's long, that can be a pain in the neck to edit, and it can be really overwhelming. If you're working on something that's, over 2,000 to 5,000 words, it can easily start to feel overwhelming. And then you get into novels, books, and it's just like, oh my gosh, how do I edit this thing? So I always edit for details as I go, and then I come back for concepts and then do a final detail edit along the way. So if I write, 500 words or something, I will go back through for details. I will use Grammarly, which is a great app we can talk about another time, to check for grammar stuff and typos and that kind of stuff. I edit for details, and then I'll go back later, do a concept edit, and then I'll come back and do a final detail edit. But at least at that final detail edit, I'm not having to catch every single problem. It's mostly cleaned up by then. So if it's longer, do edit as you go. That's what I would recommend. So I'm super curious here if those tips work for you. If you have other editing, like leaving time for edits, thoughts or tips or tricks, I would love to hear them in the comments. And then, okay, so what are we reading this week? Guys, I said last week, or maybe it was the week before. No, it was last week, that I was starting Diary of a Wimpy Kid to read for a freelance project. And I'm not a huge fan. I just felt like, it was fun, kind of fun, but like the kid's an idiot. And I get that that's funny. I really do, especially for kids. But I just felt like at no point was there any character development, and that just feels like a really sloppy writing style to me. Not sloppy, but kind of lazy. I don't know. I don't get the appeal. So if you like those books or your kids like those books, I would love to hear why, because I want to be proven wrong. Tell me all the things why your kids love those books or you love those books. And yeah, let's talk about it. I'd love to hear. And in the meantime, tell me what you have been reading in the comments. Would love to hear about that. And as always, hit subscribe if you get a chance. Would love to continue to connect with you through these videos. All right, guys. Talk to you next time.